Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all safe and doing well. My name is Michelle McCarthy-Behler, and I'm the Assistant Librarian for Public Services at the Frick Art Reference Library. Welcome to our webinar on World War II-Era Provenance Research, Free Web Resources. I want to take a minute and just explain the program controls that you have at your disposal. On your control dock, as an attendee, you should see that there's an orange arrow, which will allow you to collapse and expand the webinar dock as needed. Just note that the X in the upper right-hand corner will exit out of the webinar completely should you need to do so. Below the orange arrow as well, you should see three icons, a microphone, a window, and a hand icon. The hand icon will allow you to raise your hand to alert us to your attention. So just as a practice run, can everyone just raise your hands? Let me know that you can hear me all right. Perfect. Fantastic. So you can use the raise your hand feature to let us know if you're having any sort of technology trouble as well. There should also be a Q&A feature that's available to you. That feature will allow you to ask questions that we'll answer at the end of the webinar. Our moderator today is Ashley Hinshaw, and she'll be available to troubleshoot the program with you if you're having any issues, and we'll also gather and ask any questions that you've posed during the webinar itself. Ashley, would you like to introduce yourself to our attendees before we get started?
Hello, everyone. As Michelle said, my name is Ashley Hinshaw, and I'm the NIARC Crest Fellow for Reader Services at the Frick Art Reference Library.
Great, thank you, Ashley. If we don't get to your question today, or if you want to reach out about something in particular a little bit later, please feel free to message me via email and we can discuss further. Finally, we'll be recording this webinar, but we won't be referring to any participants by name. We'll also send out the slide deck with annotations along with a brief survey on Monday, and we'd really appreciate your honest feedback into the program. Great, so let's get started and just take a look at today's schedule. So we're going to begin with a short introduction that'll cover the goals that we set out to accomplish through the webinar, and also a brief historical overview of Nazi confiscation activities. Keep in mind this is not going to be all-inclusive since it's such a monumental topic, but we're going to highlight some important points that'll be useful to note when contextualizing the resources. From there, we'll explore multinational databases and national databases, and we'll also spend some time discussing World War II-era provenance research strategies. And then we'll close with a brief Q&A session. So the goals of this webinar are as follows. We'd like to gain an introduction to the history of Nazi confiscation activities of the period. We'd like to understand unique issues concerning World War II-era provenance. We want to learn to use free and multinational and national databases, and also to become familiar with research strategies for this era of provenance as well. So World War II-era provenance has its own set of unique challenges. Provenance research in general can be very interdisciplinary, and World War II-era in particular can require familiarity with a range of topics, including art history, politics, as well as changing geographical boundaries, the history of collecting, and even restitution law. These allow you to understand the historical circumstances in which things changed hands when conducting research. And it also means using a multitude of different types of sources as well. So archives and inventories are useful, catalogs raisonné, exhibition catalogs, similar to provenance research from other periods as well, museum curatorial files, which contain a lot of information of museum collections, and also artist and dealer correspondences, or even collector correspondences, and also genealogy records, believe it or not. Another thing is that we need to recognize that there are going to be misidentifications in these inventories, also inadequate descriptions, and maybe even mistakes in attributions. The Nazis often kept meticulous records of confiscated works, which can give us a really good idea as to how much was stolen and how much is still unaccounted for. However, misidentifications or lack of identifications altogether can sometimes mean that objects can't be traced further than maybe to an art dealer, which can make things really difficult when trying to find the original owners. The good news, though, is that due to large-scale digitization projects and publicly accessible materials, there are many more resources available to provenance researchers than in the past. So with these points in mind, let's jump right into the historical overview. So today, as we said, we'll cover Nazi confiscation activities, some of the activities, and then we'll also do the Eisenstab, Reichsleiter, Rosenberg. We'll dive into those a little bit. That's I'll be referring to that as the ERR. But just as a beginning, art really played a prominent role in Nazi core worldview, and its importance influenced their treatment of artworks as a result. Occupation of other European territories ensured that Nazi looting agencies could confiscate work from both private and public collections. The Nazi looting agency that we'll be discussing today, as I said before, was the ERR, but just keep in mind that there was also a whole network of dealers who worked with the Nazis in other countries, and also a lot of Aryanized businesses that worked with the ERR and other Nazi agencies. Reasons for why they plundered, there are several. This is a large topic in and of itself. We could start with the removal of degenerate art from Germany, and also in order to sell these pieces for more money for the government in general. Also to collect items of that culturally documented enemies of the Reich, and also to collect art for their own proposed artistic initiatives, such as the planned but never realized Führer Museum in Linz, which was going to become the cultural center of the new Reich, and also just for private collections of officials themselves. So these are just a few categories of Nazi confiscations, which included degenerate art or modern art, in a lot of ways, private property of Jewish and non-Jewish in and outside of Germany, as well as religious and state organizations as well. Just to let you know, today we're going to focus only on confiscated European art rather than more religious in nature like Judaica or even non-Western specific collections, but just note that the Nazis did loot this as well. So the Eisenstab, Reichsleiter, Rosenberg, or the ERR, was the special Nazi unit and task force charged with confiscating prominent Jewish collections in Nazi-occupied territories. These included France, Poland, Italy, Soviet Union, the Baltic states, and even Greece. This was the main agency involved in the systematic looting of cultural treasures. It was originally established to acquire collections for the National Socialist University, or Schule, that was intended to show cultural material related to opponents of Nazi ideology. So originally, they sought after Jewish, Masonic, and communist collections throughout the occupied territories. And then eventually, they also began looting more heavily non-Jewish private collections as well. It operated out of the Jeu de Paume Museum in Paris from about 1940 to 1944 after the occupation. And it was there that Nazi personnel filed and photographed and packed a lot of collections to transport back into the Reich or back into Germany. Shipments would often go to Hitler himself for evaluations as well. And this is also where a lot of works might have been sold to buyers through neutral countries like Switzerland in order to raise capital. So part of their responsibilities was also cloaking sales that may have been made under duress or forced. And also making agreements, as I said, with art dealers in other countries, and together looted more than 21,000 individual objects from about over 200 at least Jewish-owned collections. So we can head right into the databases now that we have a little bit of background and contextualization. So today I wanted to get started first with multinational databases. So today we're going to focus on the International Research Portal for Nazi-Era Cultural Property, lootedart.com, and then the Lost Art database as well. These are international portals that connect US and European museums and repositories that possess collections related to World War II era cultural property. Portals are great resources because they allow for exchanging information and initiating and joining systematic research projects on physically disparate collections. So they're great initiatives. So first, let's jump into the International Research Portal for records related to Nazi-era cultural property. From here, I'm just going to refer to it as the IRP. So this is a collaborative, international collaboration, of archival institutions with holdings about Nazi-era cultural property, as we said before. It exists to expand public access to archival records that have been internationally dispersed all through one single portal. I just want to direct your attention here to the search institutions and collections part of the page in the upper left-hand corner. So the institutions is going to be a list of institutions that are actually collaborating in this effort. We have Belgium is represented, the United States, Austria, Berlin itself, even France as well. And then on the collection side, we'll see that this is actually a list of databases. So these are also national databases that you can also search all at once through this single portal. So let's jump right into the searching. There are two types of searching features here. The difference between the two is that the Start Searching feature will allow you to search through multiple databases that we saw in the Collections tab up here. The Start Browsing, by contrast, will allow you to browse a list of descriptions of relevant holdings at participating institutions, along with links to their respective websites and finding aids. So I'll just click on it so you can see what I mean. So for instance, the National Archives is first of the United States. So we see there's a description here. We also see a listing of their records as well, links to their online catalogs, and then even through digital images and finding aids as well. And you can do this for the other institutions. The one thing I will say is just be aware that just because they're listed here does not necessarily mean that they're digitized, but just shows you where they're located in case you want to contact the institution directly, perhaps for reproductions or maybe for further information. The Start Searching feature is set up a little bit differently. So as I said, this is searching those national databases listed under the Collections tab here. It is going to be a keyword and phrase searching primarily, but that also makes it a really versatile search because it allows you to search by collector's name, artist name, titles of works. So you can be a little bit more specific in this. Or rather general, start from a general place and then get a little bit more narrow. So in this case, I'd like to search for the Rothschild collection. So we'll just type in Rothschild and see what comes up. These translate keywords here. You're welcome to use these too. This will just translate from either of these two languages. And now once we've started the search, you can see the left-hand side, this is going to be where the collections are listed. And then the hit side is actually going to be linked to this collections or this database's catalog, where you can actually see the results. So obviously the ones that come up with 0 don't have anything, whereas the ones that have numbers and are lit up in green will tell you what those catalogs are pulling from. There's also an advanced field here that you can use as well if you're after something a little bit more specific. You can search by artist, location, and even technique. Just be aware that these are going to pull up some subject headings as well. You don't need to use these, but if you'd like to, you're more than welcome to. So we can see what comes up for Vermeer. So just a few, and so on. Okay, now we can jump right into lootedart.com. So lootedart.com is the central registry of information on looted cultural property, and it's a comprehensive repository of information that's devoted to Nazi looting and also contemporary efforts and research to resolve all outstanding claims issues. It was established through the Commission of Looted Art in Europe, and it has basically a wealth of international and country-specific resources that are a great way to stay up to date with current research and restitution information. So similar to before, you see that there are a few tabs on the top. These are orange. If we go into the information by country, we see that this includes information on national policies and guidelines, art trade information, national museums, and also research resources. So users can browse the resources by countries that are available using this left-hand menu here. This is a list of countries. And you can see laws, policies, guidelines, and other specific research resources are outlined here. The international portal is going to show you international bibliographies as well as laws and policy guidelines on an international level, and even events and conferences and research programs as well. So this is a great tool if you're just looking for, again, sort of like a multinational approach to your research. The research resources is going to be a lot more general. It mostly has web resources and information on restitution cases, and even a list of looted property seekers and owners, and even news reports themselves. So this is one other resource. And then also there's claimant information if you'd like to place a claim in any sort of way for artwork. But just if we go back to the home page as we are now, we see that there are actually two different databases that are attributed to lootedart.com. So there's an an information database and also an object database. So if we click on one, it'll take us to a general search page here. So the information search and the object search are going to be a little bit different. The information database contains documentation from about 49 countries, and again, it includes laws, policies, reports, as well as archival records and resources that you can use in order to search for documentation that's found on this website specifically. So that's really important to note. So let's say, for example, we're really interested in maybe finding a list of red flagged names of collaborators that was put together by the US Army after the war. So we're looking for the Art Looted Intelligence Unit of the United States Army name index. So for this, we would type in ALIU index and search. This is something specific that we would like results about. And we can see already these are the different pages on the website, and you can tell that from the general pages, there's the index right there. So that would be useful if you don't have time to go through everything. And then in addition to that, there's also the object search here, which contains about 25,000 objects of different kinds, including paintings, drawings, antiquities, and even other types of objects that were looted, missing, and or have been restituted by or from about 15 countries. The primary methods of searching are through the artist, also object information, but what's interesting too is you can search by provenance, so you can actually search an owner's name as well, and the dates perhaps. You can also do combination searches to see if there's a particular artist that you're looking into and you do know who owned it at a certain period. This is a great way to use these in a combination way, but also even just by themselves. So for instance, Vermeer's The Astronomer is a very famous looted object. So if we do a search for this, this will bring us the results. So we have Vermeer, we have The Astronomer, and if we click on it here, you can see that there's a status that's attributed to this object was looted but has now been restituted. You can see that there's provenance information, so this did come from the Rothschild collection, who it was confiscated by, which is the ERR, and then also that it was used for their planning of the Linz Museum itself. So this is great information to have. And then also additional information and sources of those informations as well that confirms it. And then you can always, if you have any questions, email lootedart.com directly. And they're a very up-to-date agency as well. They are a very fast response. It's worth mentioning too that the data that comes in the search results are actually given to lootedart.com or submitted to lootedart.com by museums, but also by private collectors as well. So it's not just a general internet search. It's actually using searches that, or using results that have been submitted to the website. Next, let's go on to the Lost Art database. So the Lost Art database documents cultural assets that were confiscated from public institutions and private collections during the Nazi era in Germany, in particular from Jewish owners as a result of persecution, but also other owners as well. The data pertaining to the items comes from different sources, including museum online catalogs and also applications registered through individuals of private collections and so on. One thing just to point out is that this database is separated into two types of requests. So we have search requests here, and then we also have found object reports. Search requests are reports registered by individuals and public institutions of lost artwork that they can prove used to be in their collections, but were lost during the Second World War. And then you can also search found object reports, which are reports that were registered also by individuals and public institutions of artworks that they have in their own collection, but whose origin is not clear or not entirely clear, and that may have been acquired during the Nazi era. So there are different types of search functions. At first, you have a simple search here, which again, we can use as just a keyword search. And really the difference between this and the advanced search is that you're not going to be able to specify what kind of results you'd like, if you'd like search requests or if you'd like found reports. But if we do a search for Renoir, so you see we have about 131 search results altogether. You're able to sort your results as well by title and artist. But in the first result, so we can already see, if we just look at this preliminary information, the kind of reports. This is a search request. So we have identifying information, some more details about the item. But if we continue a little bit further, we can see the reproduction of the item itself. And then we also see contact information here. This contact information, this is from the Kunsthal Bremen. This is going to be obviously a museum that has lost the item and is now searching for it. So you can see on the upper right-hand corner, there's also a profile for the Kunsthal Bremen as well under the search request that you can click on. And this will also allow you to see other groups of reported objects by this institution that they're trying to find again. So that's one way to search it as well, as long as you just keep in mind that, again, you can't separate between searching search requests and found objects. The advanced search feature, however, you can add a little bit more identifying information as well. And the kind of report, just to bring you down to the bottom here, you can make that distinction. So search requests, we could do just a general search request, but you can choose whether it was removed during the war or just when the Nazis came to power as well. But let's do a found report since we just saw some search requests. Let's do it for, let's go with Lieberman. Max Lieberman. So here you'll see there are about 103 results. So again, so these are items that have been found. These are in public institutions or in private collections, and they recognize that these items have some discrepancies in maybe how they were acquired or the years, but they don't necessarily know how they were acquired or during what period, just that it might have been acquired during this era. So what they do is you can take a photo and then also some contact information if you have some further identifying or more information about that item. So that's really a great tool. Next, let's move on to national databases. The main difference between these and the multinational databases that we just looked at is that these do not search multiple databases of different countries. Each database here includes collection information regarding the activity of only one nation, either Germany or another. So the ones we're going to go over today is the German sales catalogs from 1900 to 1945, NARA's Fold 3, the Jeux de Paume database, the Degenerate Art database, also the National Fund of the Republic of Austria, and then we'll close with the Netherlands Art Property Collection. So here's the German art sales catalogs from 1900 to 1945. So this is a collaborative effort between the Getty Research Institute, the Kunstbibliothek, and also the Heidelberg University. And it's an initiative to locate, digitize, and add to the Getty Provenance Index all German language auction catalogs from 1900 to 1945, but specifically also within the Nazi era of 1930 to 1945. So this is just some preliminary information, but we can just click on through to the Provenance Index itself. And this tool is used not just for World War II era provenance, but just provenance in general as well. Let's see if we can. Okay, so it looks like what you're able to do, because this is such a versatile index in and of itself, you do have the option of searching archival inventory descriptions as well as stock books. But for here, since we're interested in sales catalogs, we'll just leave this to include the sales catalogs, and we'll just exclude everything else. But you do have that option as well. The great thing about this resource is that it digitally merges auction catalogs from over 50 libraries and museums so that users can conduct detailed searches on the Getty Provenance Index and then see the digitized catalog through Heidelberg University. And it includes probably about 9,000 historical auction catalogs altogether, mainly published in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, which were made available online and in open access. So for this, for instance, let's say that I'm looking for a specific auction catalog or a specific auction in general. But in particular, I'm looking to see what Picasso works were sold during this auction. So let's say I'm interested in the Degenerate auction in Lucerne, Switzerland. So I would put in Picasso, go a little bit further. I would identify the type of object, which is the painting. And then in the events, under the transaction type, you can actually select sold or unsold, or you can just leave it blank. I'm going to put sold because I'm interested in the Picasso works that were sold during this particular sale. And the sale event dates, although I'm looking for one that happened in 1939, I'm going to still put the 1938 range just to make sure it grabs everything. And country, you can just add Switzerland. If you do know the city, like the Degenerate art auction of 1939 that I'd like to put in is Lucerne, Switzerland, but it's going to go by the German spelling. So if you're not sure how that's spelt, you can actually use these browse cities on the right-hand side here, or just these browsing tools here that'll allow you to get the spelling that will pull the most results. But for now, let's just leave it to Switzerland, and then we'll do a quick search. So here we have about 3 results from June 1939 for Picasso. And again, these are sold works. And also by object title, you'll see that these are going to be in the language of the original work itself. But let's view the first one. And you can see that there's a sales catalog number there. There's also a lot number. You can see that there's information about the object itself, the type of subject, so mostly identifying information. And then in addition to that, a little bit lower, you'll see that the auction house is Fischer and that the sale location is Lucerne, Switzerland. And also the sales price for it as well. So this was 36. And if you continue further into the sale description, you'll also be able to see the sale location information. So it's Gallery Fischer, the Grand Hotel National. And then a little bit further, you'll see 2 links, one with sales contents and one with the catalog PDF. So if you click on the catalog PDF, it'll bring you to the Heidelberg University page where you can see an actual digitized version of the catalog for this sale. So you can browse other works that may have been sold through this. In addition to that, you can also just click the sale contents to see what other lots were sold through this auction. So that's the Getty altogether, which is a great resource. Now, next, let's go into Fold 3. So this is NARA military records. So Fold 3 is a resource through Ancestry.com that provides access to important military records, as I said before. It has a very unique partnership with the National Archives that allows users to access fully digitized Holocaust-era assets records that NARA holds on microfilm. The only caveat is that users will need to create a free account in order to access these digitized documents, which includes overall about 2.3 million pages of administrative files, both Nazi and Ally, which is really fascinating. It's really easy to create an account. You can just, as long as you have a working email, you can set one up pretty fast, actually. So one thing just to notice, if you're not that sure about Nazi looting history and even post-war restitutions. After the war, the United States military set up several temporary collecting points in Germany, in Marburg, Munich, Wiesbaden, and Offenbach, just in order to hash out looted art and also to try to investigate how to repatriate materials back to their countries of origin. In doing so, They not only created administrative files for themselves, but they also collected administrative files related to looted art that the Nazis had created as well, as I mentioned earlier. So here, located on this page, you pretty much have some preliminary information on the Holocaust records. And then if you go a little bit further, these are digitized collections at NARA that are digitized from their microfilms, as I said earlier, in their Holocaust Access collections. So you can just click through these and browse through the digitized images just very quickly, or you're welcome to use this looted art keyword phrase search box here, which will allow you to search across all of NARA's collections related to this Holocaust-era assets collection, I should say, in one single search. And it'll just search everything that matches the search term. But so we've done some artist names. How about we do an Aryanized German art gallery? So let's say in particular I'm interested in A.S. Dre. So this was an Aryanized German art gallery from Munich, and Franz Dre, who owned it, actually emigrated to New York City in 1936 and became very well known in New York City as well. But in order to Aryanize, he did have to give up his firm in Munich. So we can do a search for his name here. And you'll see we have about 76 results, and this is all digitized OCR'd material. On the left-hand side, you'll see that you have a few filters there as well. The publication name just refers to the name of the digitized collections that it's pulling these searches from. And you also can use these for other reasons as well, not for our purposes right now, but you're welcome to specify the language if necessary. So let's choose this first one here. Right, so as I said, these are OCR, so this is going to be pulling the actual name straight from the digitized material. One thing to note, so I put A.S. Dre in quotation marks just because I was interested in a particular firm or person. That being said, though, you don't necessarily need to do it, but just know that it is going to maybe pick up different characters that not necessarily are within the phrase that you're trying to search. So you can always just put it in quotes if you're after something very specific. And we can see that this is a document from Walter Bornheim from a gallery in Munich. And we can also see that this is to A.S. Dre. And then on the right-hand side, you can view that it's June 1945. So this is just one of the ways that you can access the documents and save them as well. This is a really great resource. Next, let's take a look at the Jeu de Paume database. Oh, guess we're having some trouble with that. Here we go. So this is the Jeu de Paume database. As we said, this is where the ERR was based for a period of time and where they documented a lot of the materials that they looted. The Jeu de Paume database altogether is a collaboration between the Conference of Jewish Material Claims Against Germany, or the Claims Conference, and also the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, as well as the WJRO. So this project in particular digitized the ERR registration card files of French Jewish collections that are currently held by NARA, registration cards that are held by NARA, and then combined them with ERR photographs taken of those same artworks mentioned in the registration cards that are actually held by the Federal Archives in Germany. So that can get a little bit confusing, but this is basically the coming together of the inventory listings and also the photograph of the artwork that passed through the ERR. The ERR did plunder, art in many different areas, but it's worth noting that this database in particular is only going to cover documentation of artwork taken from France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. But what's really interesting about this database is that the results represent tastes of collectors and even specialists in Western Europe as well. So we have several different types of searching. You can do a search the database, which again is going to be another keyword or phrase search, an advanced search, which I'll show you in a moment. And then there's also these browse options here. The browse features are by art owners, which are those that the ERR confiscated from, as well as browsing by collections. The difference between the two is that Sometimes collections contain multiple owners, or because some items were confiscated from dealers that held works on consignment for other individuals or by other individuals. So that's just an important distinction. But if we click on through to browse collections, you can see on the in the results here, there are about 571 altogether. As I said, this is coming from an index itself. So this is going to be a finite number of works and finite number of names. So the collections here are listed, and then also the codes on the left-hand side are those ERR codes that were given to the collections in order to catalog and keep track of them. So if we click on this one here and just browse objects from this collection, a denery collection, scroll a little bit further, we see there are about 9 matches here, and this is going to pull everything that belonged to that collection that you can then open up and see more information about. If we go back to the home page, we can check out the Browse Art Owners. And here you'll see, again, this is a finite list. There's about 631 altogether, as we can see from the display. And we see they're organized by last name alphabetical, but it also includes the first name, the city in which they lived, and as well as the country. So we see France, Belgium, and the Netherlands represented here. And again, similar to the collections, you can click on the collection itself, and that will show you the objects that were owned by this particular person. This you don't need to use the browse for, though. You can also just move on to the direct advanced search approach as well. So we have the advanced search. You have a drop-down menu because this is pulling, as I said, from a finite index, where you can use this drop-down menu in order to choose the name in particular. If you did browse the collections and you notice the codes, you can browse by code if that makes it a little bit easier for you. If you're aware of the inventory number, which some people are from different databases, can aggregate this information. And also if you have the artist name, you're welcome to just search by that, and as well as medium and any other identifying information. These filters on the bottom here can be really useful. Just be careful the way you use them because you don't want to end up limiting search results that maybe just didn't include this. So for here, let's say we're interested in, I'm going to search for George Wildenstein. So he was a prominent art collector in Paris. Here. And let's say I'm interested in maybe Fragonard that he owned. So the search results are going to be below the feature altogether. So you see displaying 1 to 11 of 11 matches, and you'll see that these are going to list everything about the identifiers that we put on. You're welcome to put in more, but I just wanted to do this to show you. So if you click on the first one, you'll see that, again, now this is the first record. This is by George Wildenstein, as we saw. This is his collection, the inventory numbers that are attributed to this collection based on Nazi information, and then also the description of the object itself, as well as literature and even provenance information here. And then this is interesting. This includes intake place and transfer place, and also transfer dates, which is going to be really important, including Munich numbers, if this is a work that you want to explore further. And this information was actually pulled, as I said, from the index cards themselves. So if we just click to enlarge the images, so they may not be working at the moment. But these are digitized similar to the narrow records that we saw using Fold 3. These are actually going to be available versus Fold 3 as well. But this is just going to show you this information just written in hand as well. So we can see that the transfer date was 1940. So this is the transfer date outside of the Jeu de Paume back into the Reich. And we can see that it also includes repatriation information as well, and whether or not it was restituted. Now let's check out the degenerate art database. So the degenerate art database is basically an index of works that were confiscated from German museums in 1937. So the database can only be searched for artists and artworks that were included in the index itself. The complete index is based on the Nazi inventory of seizures, but also includes other degenerate artworks that were given by museums to the National Socialist Party or were seized without record altogether. The list itself stems from the estate of an Austrian art dealer named Heinrich Robert Fischer, or Harry Fischer, who had emigrated to Great Britain in 1938. It's important to note, too, that this list also includes the titles of destroyed artwork. So the list, as I said, this is the basis for the database itself and where the results are being pulled from. So you can do a full text search here, again, for keywords or relevant terms, but you're also welcome to search by artist, title, dates, but it also includes very interesting descriptions or filters. So, for instance, geography. This is actually going to be a list of museums that degenerate art was pulled from in 1937. There's about 3 pages of this, so just make sure you scroll through as well. There's about 105, judging from what it says here. And then the lost through is really interesting as well. If you just drop down the menu, you can see that there's lost through seizure, there's also destroyed, there's also exchanged. So this allows you to kind of see what the fate of different artworks in particular that you're looking for. In addition to that, there's also a drop-down menu here for exhibitions as well that included degenerate art ranging from 1933 all the way up to 1937. So for this, because it's laid out the way it is, what you could even do is you could just search for a specific exhibition and see what works were included there. Or you can even just search by the loss through or the type of loss that occurred, or you can even just search for the museum if you're having a specific objective about a museum's collection as well. For our purposes, let's choose Joseph Albers. I'm going to leave everything else blank, but this is just one way that you can search. So this is going to pull everything from that index. So we have about 6 altogether, and we can just go through all of them. Just very briefly, you can see that there's some identifying information that includes the museum of origin, also the inventory numbers that were given by the Nazis, and also the titles of the artwork. And we'll just click on the first one. So the first artwork, again, we have identifying information. There's also a group lot, so other works that were confiscated with. There's also the number of items in one group, which is interesting to note. And as I said, the Museum of Origin can tell us already so much about what happened to this piece or where it was at one point. And then the loss through seizure, but then also the status. This is going to be in German because this is from the Free University in Berlin. But that, I encourage you, if you don't know German, this to just try to translate it because it's really important information. This status already says that this work was destroyed altogether, so that's really fascinating. And then further down, you can see the artist's name, the provenance, and even associated work as well. So it's a really great initiative. Some of them do include images as well, just not all of them. We also have the National Fund of the Republic of Austria. So for this one and also for the next one, just because I want to make sure we get to questions, I'm just going to touch a little bit more or a little bit on just the general characteristics of these databases. So the National Fund of the Republic of Austria has an art database that provides information on cultural objects currently located in Austrian museums and collections, as well as, but with a focus on Vienna, but it does search other collections in Austria as well, which according to latest provenance in research may have been seized under Nazi rule or National Socialist rule. The database takes place in cooperation with the federal museums and collections concerned and with other Austrian institutions conducting provenance. And the aim is really of determining whether there is a possibility for restituting these objects. So here we just have a regular keyword search, but if we just click the search button, it'll take you into the full search website or page. Yeah, so you can see there's already over 9,000 entries. Again, so this is coming from museum collections. That's where this data has been entered from. This is just an example of a national database of museums in particular that are coming together in order to look into their collections to see what kind of acquisition methods were taking place and at what points in order to sort of rectify these kinds of very problematic histories. In particular, this database, though, if we go to the search filters, what's really interesting about it is that it includes specific historical factors as filters that relate to these collections. So under provenance, for example, you can see, you can check whether or not you're interested in collections that have been purchased from a private collection, purchased by a donation. This is a donation by Julius Fargel. You can specify Julius Fargel worked notoriously with Gestapo offices. And then there's also purchases from the Dorotheum between these war years or National Socialist rule as well. So 1938, 1945, even after. This is a very old Central European auction house and art dealer as well, but this is still needs to be included, obviously, for their purchases. And then also, if the means isn't clear, if it's been purchased or acquired via, a Gestapo of some kind, because they did, loot and take materials for their personal collections as well, and also anything still found in storage or may have been on loan to the museum. So definitely take advantage of these provenance filters. And then you also have filters if you want to search for specific museum collections, or if you're interested in particular work from a certain period, as we've seen in different art museum databases already, and motifs as well. But what's interesting too is you can also search the restitution status, whether there's any research going on into this object, whether it needs to be clarified, or whether it's been returned to heirs. So this is constantly up to date, which is good. But in particular, if we're interested in maybe something that was purchased or donated by this individual, just by clicking it or selecting it, that's going to pull up results or entries already. You can add more to the filters as you go, but for now we'll see that about 174 from Austrian museums did include a purchase by this person or a donation by this person. So that's a great resource. And, as you can see, a lot of museums are now moving towards that end, which is great to know. And then we also have the Netherlands Art Property Collection. I really wanted to include the Netherlands in this presentation just because they were one of the points. There are so many points, but also just to see what different nations are doing as a response to this type of work. So the Netherlands Art Property Collection includes provenance information that's related to individual artworks in the Netherlands Art Property Collection itself. So again, this is going to be a finite collection similar to the Austrian that we saw just now. And the collection is part of the Dutch National Art Collection and it includes former looted Jewish property as well as even voluntary sold trade stock at the time. Altogether, it's about 3,800 items and consists of paintings, drawings, prints, ceramics, even furniture as well, and other special items. It's good to note that some of the items in here are in museums and government institutions in the Netherlands, as well as abroad, while others are in storage. So just keep in mind when making search for these collections, any sort of search fields. So if we do a quick search here, just to get to the search page, you can see that there's filters similar to the Austrian, the one that we just saw, that you can use. So you can filter just by missing artworks. You can filter whether or not there's a photo available, origin name. So this is going to be the original owner, and then also filter by place of origin, as well as artist and other identifying information as we go further down, like the object type, keyword, and even just types of materials, and obviously the date of the artwork. So what's really interesting about this, and also the Austrian one, is you can filter according to the artwork itself, or again, the origin name or the place. So let's try by filtering by origin name. If you do have something specific that you think is going to be present in this collection, then I would definitely, put it into the search results altogether. Or you can simply just click on one of the filters, and that's going to bring you to the information. Seems to be a little bit of trouble. But if we click on this first one here, you can see that this doesn't include an image, but it does include some particular information about the artwork itself. So we have bronze, we have a spearhead from southwestern Africa. We also have other information. But if you go a little bit further into the findings, you'll see that there's a note whether or not the provenance data is conclusive or not, if it's known when and from whom art dealers purchased this. So that's really interesting information and good to know if you're after something particular that you think can be found in this catalog. There's also reconstruction and origin history as well. So we can see that this was sold during the war, who it was sold to. You can see that this right here, the SNK number, this is a specific National Socialist number associated with this artwork. And then also other identifying information as well in terms of possession. So I'm just going to wrap this up so we can get to questions a little bit, but just a few things to keep in mind. Each database is going to aggregate different sources of information and has their own objectives as well. So that's just knowing what you think you can actually, work with the objects within the databases themselves, knowing the level of sophistication in regard to searching parameters, and also taking into account the terms and the meanings of some of the terms as well. So for instance, not returned, if you get that in some of the database results, not returned can mean several different things. It could mean not returned to the country of origin, or it could mean not returned to the heir or the original owner. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. Some information, or some databases rather, are aggregated from multiple sources. Others are just from a single source as well. So just having those expectations in your mind when approaching these databases can really save you a lot of frustration when working with them. And then just some other further research strategies when doing World War II era provenance is just checking for gaps, maybe between 1933 and 1945, whether or not the object was in Europe during a certain time period. Also understanding specifically the country during the time of its occupation. So for instance, if you're looking at looted artwork in Poland, you want to start 1938, but if you want to look for looted artwork from France, you probably wouldn't start till about 1940, because that's not until it was occupied. So it's not to say that there weren't sales made under duress outside of these years, but that's just one way to approach it. Another thing too is that red flagged names using the biographical index of individuals involved in looting of artworks. Pulled together by the Art Looting Investigation Unit of the United States Army, or the ALIU. This is a great resource when trying to figure out red flag names or names of potential collaborators. This includes a lot of people who were interrogated by the United States Army after the fact. So some of them have since been cleared, some have not, so it's best to do your research. But this is a great starting point in sort of understanding how things changed hands and which hands they changed to. Also research the names of collectors or collections that have known to be looted. That's a great place to start. And of course, cross-referencing information with multiple different sources. This is great that all of these present digitized ways of accessing information, but you also want to make sure that you're accessing physical resources if that's useful to you, and also different museums as well, so that you can make sure to put together a complete picture as much as you can of objects. And then some additional resources. This is also going to be included as we send out the slide deck, but this is just some additional resources and different additional databases by country that we didn't get to today, but that if you're looking for a particular country, you know, please reach out to me, or you can simply use the ones on this list, and then other research projects that are related to provenance as well. So thank you all so much for attending the webinar. If you have any questions, please let us know.
That was great, Michelle. There are a couple of questions. The first one I'm going to read, it's specific to the Jeu de Paume database. They were wondering what a Munich number is.
So a Munich number usually relates to the Munich collecting points. After the United States Army came in and they set up those temporary collecting points, one of which was in Munich. You see that there's a lot of Munich collection numbers that are then also ascribed to the items, in addition to the original owner, the original numbers that the Nazis had also placed on them. So yeah, so it could be that the temporary collecting point numbers usually. Mm-hmm.
The next question, someone was wondering how much overlap is there between the international and national databases?
That definitely depends on the international database itself. The IRP, if we went back to it, we could see a lot of those listed under the collections portion of databases. Some of them are related to the national databases that we went over today in the second half of the portion. So there is quite a lot of overlap. And really, it just depends on maybe the position of the country themselves. I know, a lot of German museums have a lot of funding, whereas a lot of countries maybe don't have as much. So this can sort of mean that there is a lot of overlap between some databases and some less than others. So that kind of depends on the database, but usually there can be quite a lot between the multinational.
Okay. The next question, will you make available the website URLs that you referenced in today's presentation?
Absolutely, yes. So these are going to be part of the slide deck. We're going to annotate it a little bit so that it's going to be a little bit more informational, and then you'll be able to access the URLs that way as well.
This is more of a general question, it seems. I'm a provenance researcher at the Art Loss Register in London. I wanted to ask if you could speak a little bit about access to the Frick archives in general, but also on the progress of the digitization of your archives.
Yes, definitely. So the Frick photo archives, so if you aren't aware already, some people may not be, that the Frick Art Reference Library, Helen Frick in particular, who was Frick's daughter, she was the founder of the library, and she also led an initiative, and she did work with World War II Army as well to look at the digital images, or not, I'm sorry, not digital images, but the photographs of the collections in order to sort of piece together the photo from the photo archives of private collections in Europe that include relevant artworks. These are being digitized, a lot of, depending on the school. We have been at this for quite a few years, and we're hoping that we'll get a lot of it done this year in particular.
Okay. Do you know any databases for sales catalogs in the UK pre-1939?
Sales catalogs in the UK pre-1939. One resource that you can use that's not specific to World War II era database, but it is a subscription database specifically for auction catalogs, is Scipio. So if you have a local library or some sort of museum or academic affiliation, I would recommend checking out Scipio and seeing what could be on there. In addition to that, there are lots of online digital repositories right now. A lot of them are open access in response to the COVID crisis. So you're welcome to, maybe if you have a catalog in mind, try searching those. That could be Europeana, HathiTrust. It could also be Internet Archive. So just taking advantage of these digital resources as well, if you don't have access to a subscription database like Scipio.
Okay. This question is about the content of these databases. It seems that most databases include artworks that can be easily identified. What about minor or unknown artists? Where to start with these kind of works?
That's definitely a little bit more difficult. It depends, I guess, on which route you're starting from. If you're starting from a particular collector, you can actually find a lot of information. Maybe if you can find certain records devoted to that collector himself, maybe personal papers, if that's possible, at least in the United States. So there is the American archives. The Archives of American Art, rather, which has a large holding of archival materials related to emigre collections. And you can use that to sort of find correspondence and other records that may pertain to particular collections. In addition to that, again, you have a lot of archival material that you can try to look for as well using other databases. But the International Research Portal might be one way that you could do so, the IRP that we discussed in the beginning.
Okay. I'm not sure you can answer this question, but I think it's on some people's minds, so I'll go ahead and ask. When will the Frick Library open at the temporary Breuer location, the Frick Madison?
Right. So we're still kind of pinning down dates, but we're definitely going to be, hopefully we'll be open in 2021.
Okay, that seems to be all of them. Oh, I'm sorry, one last one just came in. What is the name of the U.S. Emigre Art Archives?
I'm not sure of the exact art collection in particular, but if you go to the Archives of American Art, let me see if I can just grab you. I'll just be saying it out loud,
Okay.
but I'll make sure to add that. Well, actually, let me see. I have it on the additional. Yeah. So the Archives of American Art, this is going to be on the website. So it's aaa.si.edu. You can visit that and you can see through their website, through their research and reference portal, how to locate those directly.
Okay, that seems to be the last question.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. I really hope you got something out of the presentation. As I said, we're going to be sending this out, the slides out annotated with all of this information that we said today. And if you have any other recommendations as to projects or programming, please shoot that our way as well. Thank you all joining us. Take care.